Welcome to Promote, Profit, Publish. I'm your host, Juliet Clark, and we have something a little different today. I think you guys are going to find this really interesting. But before we get started, I want to send you guys over to YouTube. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel if you really would like to see all of these interviews in action. We've got every single one of them over there. And that's okay if you don't too, because I know a lot of you guys listen to this on podcast. Also, don't forget to go over and take our Promote, Profit, Publish quiz and find out if you're really ready to publish. Do you have your marketing pieces in place? Do you have your platform built? Go over and find that, because there's nothing worse than publishing your book and nobody reads it. So today we're going to switch it up a little. I know we mostly have entrepreneurs on here, but today we have someone who runs a nonprofit and has written a book. And all of this is based around some life experiences that she had. And a nonprofit is in a way like a business. So Deb Landry is a best-selling, award-winning children's author of Sticks and Stones and Stumped, and the podcast co-host for Raising Cain. Her other books include the new release, Independence, which we're going to talk about that today, a memoir of secrets, discovery, and forgiveness within the family, Snapdragon Princess, and Yankee Go Home. With over 45 I can't talk today. With over 45 years of experience in business administration, management, coaching, and consulting, Deb specialized in behavioral, operational, and organizational management and holds several postgraduate coaching certifications. She is the president and executive director of Bryson Taylor, Inc., a medical and consulting firm. And as a professional consultant and coach, Deb specializes in social awareness behaviors, personal growth, professional development, and character education, with a focus on developmental education to raise resilient and respectful, wow, I really can't talk, youth. A humanitarian, Deb is the co-founder and president and executive director of Crossroads Youth Center, a 501c3 nonprofit scholarship, community art-based, and volunteer organization. So welcome, Deb. It's great to have you on here today.
Well, thank you so much. I think that you and I first met because I also own a publishing company, which is a subsidiary of my Bryson Taylor. So I think you and I met doing self-publishing and cross-promoting each other.
Yeah, I think we did. We were over on LinkedIn. That's my big project. That's my big project this year, is connecting with more and more people over on LinkedIn. I've kind of given up on the other social media platforms because they've gotten so toxic. So I guess you could say LinkedIn's my safe space if I was actually a safe space kind of person. So
if you're going to run a business, be on the one that's about business.
Exactly. So this book that you just wrote, this is so interesting. You kind of tripped into the information for this book in a very odd way and spun it off into a nonprofit. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. I have a son. One of my children is adopted. So we decided when Ancestry first came out and the recreational, DNA testing, we decided to just do his DNA test to see. We were most concerned about what his nationality was, because he was Hispanic. We had adopted him from El Paso, Texas, and we wanted to see if he was 100% Hispanic because of his skin color, and he was white. And so we did that just to see what he came up as. And there were no surprises. He was Hispanic and 100%. And we also, at the time, his girlfriend at the time, but his wife, and I decided to do it as well. And the surprise is that I came back. I always grew up thinking I was French Canadian. I'm in Maine, and found out that I was mostly Italian. There are no Italians in Maine. I mean, no big influx of Italians. So it opened up a door, and it actually started everything in my life prior to that moment. I was 60, I think, at the time I did this. So it opened up a door like, who am I and where did I come from? And, this kind of answers all the questions I had on my past about my upbringing and things like that. So it's a very interesting subject.
Yeah.
now I talk about this in my book, and I say, I thought I was all for, let's do a recreational test and see how much French we are and how much this we are. And, you watch the commercials on TV and they say, oh, my ancestors are these and that. That wasn't what it was like for me. It was very different. So if you were to ask me today, if you wanted to do a DNA test for fun, I would say, yeah, maybe. I mean, I would ask you some question first. I wouldn't say, "Oh, go do it," because so many people are finding out that dad is not their dad, and that just puts people, depending on which personalities like it, puts people in a tailspin.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just find it fascinating, but I didn't find it too fascinating at first.
Okay. And you found some extra family members, didn't you?
I did. I found a sister, which is amazing. I have a brother. And, to find out that actually I'm an only child, there's only one of me. I have now what I thought was my brother is my half brother. I have a half sister. I have 3 other siblings. And I've become very close with my sister, who ended up living 1 town away from me. So we found each other through Ancestry, and they said we were related, and we, it didn't say how we related, just said that, she was either my first cousin or sister or something like that. So we went on and went to 23andMe and did a test, and their tests are more scientific. I don't know if scientific it's the word, but they both have something they're good at. And so we did that test. We were sisters. We were half sisters. So we shared the same father. So she also thought that a specific man was her father all her whole life, and he was not. So that's been great. It's been great having a sibling, but boy, we've been going through some interesting, you get a lot of doors slammed in your face. You have to respect people's privacy about things like this. Some people aren't really excited to find out that dad had another child.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I
Very,
can imagine. Yeah.
yeah, it's very interesting. So I don't know. I would say, is there anything in your past you don't want anybody to know, or mom doesn't want anybody to know, before you go ahead and and jump on that wagon?
Yeah, I bet. I can't even imagine finding out that I have extra siblings. You kind of grow up sort of admiring your parents. I think when you get to be an adult, you realize that they're people too, but you don't find out how messy life can be until you do
No.
something like this, and the secrets and lies. So talk a little bit about in the book. You said it's a memoir of secrets, which obviously you've just covered, discovery, but what about the forgiveness aspect of all of this?
Well, yeah, that's the hard part, and that's what takes a very long time. But I think people don't realize that to forgive is not to forget. And if you forget, then things will happen to you over and over again until you start to remember. But I had to learn to forgive my mother. And I went several years without even speaking to her, because this book also spends a lot of time on narcissism and mental illness. So I spent a lot of time uh, trying to understand her, spent a lot of time trying to pull away from her, till I finally had to make the point that it was just toxic to be in the relationship, and nobody wants to pull away from their parents. And I thought I was a really bad person for wanting to do that, but actually psychologically and for the sake of myself, and I couldn't do it so much for myself, I did it for my children, and I moved away from that, and that was very helpful. But then I had to understand choices she made, why she acted the way she did. I had to realize that she was mentally ill, that she had a personality disorder. She was narcissistic. I mean, I can't diagnose her. I'm not a doctor, but she had a lot of issues. So, you don't leave people if they have diabetes and they won't stop eating sugar,
Mm-hmm.
or they have COPD and they won't stop smoking. But it's very different when it's mental health. And that took me a long time to say, okay, these are choices she made. She made these choices because that's what she thought her choices were. And just forgiving what she did, but I don't forget what she did. My mother is no longer alive, so that's kind of a moot point. But still, you have to live with that, and understand that it wasn't so much about me as it was about her.
Yeah, I actually had, I can relate to this in a big way. I was the recipient of a, one of those bank boxes after my mother passed away, and I'm the last remaining person in our family. And I remember reading the things in there and just being so angry. And I had to go talk to somebody about it. So you had to separate that for me. You know, what happened here is different than the mother you love. And, you know, that was my big awareness that, you know, sometimes parents are messy and they don't share things with you. But
They,
you do have to get in that forgiveness mode with it and understand and separate all that.
I think in the time, because I was born in the 50s, and that time is very different from now. If somebody gets pregnant, they don't get married. You don't talk, it's just like, oh, this guy's the father, but I'm married to this guy, or I'm going to marry this guy, or whatever, or I'm not going to get married at all. It's accepted in today's society, and it wasn't accepted back there, and everything was a big secret. But so much could be taken care of if people were just honest. I mean, it festers like a disease, just honesty. And that's kind of the basis for our nonprofit. I've spent, our nonprofit's going on 22 years old. And we spend most of our time on social awareness issues, teaching people about being, how to raise resilient children, how to be honest, how to be kind, how to be, just a nice person, and be respectful. Because my big tagline is, if you have self-respect and you have respect for others, mutual respect, then we wouldn't have all these problems.
And yeah,
it's that simple, and it's that difficult. So we spend a lot of time in our nonprofit about that. And I've spent a lot of time on bullying prevention, which I thought was because one of my children was bullied in school. I decided to, go right to our Capitol and start lobbying for laws, which I did, and which we got. And then I started doing it across the US, helping other people get laws in their state, thinking that I was doing that for my son and being, a real tough mom and an activist. And what I found out in the end is I was doing it because that's the way I was treated as a child. And I was constantly bullied by a person who had a mental illness. I was always told I wasn't any good, wasn't going to amount to anything. And, on and on and on, all these different things that people go through. And I finally realized I was doing it for myself. I wasn't really focused on doing it for my child, which I thought I was.
Mm-hmm. That is so interesting in today's world, because look what's going on around us, the rioting and the burning down of other people's property, hurting other people. And I really wonder if we haven't spent the last 20 years raising our children that it's the external that's important instead of the internal that's important. And just in the sense that we have so many suicides from social media. There was this great book, and I can't remember who wrote it. It's called something like What Other People Think of Me Is None of My Business.
I think I know what you mean. Yes.
Yeah. And I wish that the world could live like that, because when you can focus on your inner world and get that peace within you and not blame other people for what's going on in your world, the world becomes a much better place. And it all goes back to, I think, your generation and mine. You're slightly older than me, but not much, to personal responsibility for your own inner health and well-being.
Right. A lot of that is parenting style too. I spend a lot of time in the schools. As you said, I have 3 children's books, and I'm working on my 4th. And, I go into the schools or we, read at different places about bullying prevention and social awareness issues. But honestly, it does not start in the school. Yes, that might be where you go and people start making fun of you or teasing you or bullying you. But all of this starts right in the home, and it's the parenting style. Mm-hmm. Or the lack of parenting style, or the severity of parenting style. Kids nowadays, if you were to look at kids nowadays, let's say in their late teens and 20s, they're just so entitled. Mm-hmm. And they want to, they think they're owed everything, and they weren't taught to help, and they weren't taught to volunteer, and they were taught that there was nobody better than them. We've made them narcissists.
We have.
And, yes. And so, and it's not like when you and I were growing up. I mean, I think I I always gave parenting a lot of thought because I always said I'm not going to parent like my mother. And I'm more of there's different styles, but I'm more of an authoritative parent where these are the rules, and these are the rules you have to follow. And if you break them, then there's consequences. But I love you very much, and I'll always forgive you for everything you do. I'm here no matter what you need. And that type of parenting, which I found out later on, was that's the type of parenting we should be doing. We are in control. We are the parent. We are not their friend. And we can't give them, they can't have everything in life. If they have everything in life, they feel entitled.
I so agree with that. And when it comes to the bullying, my kids played, one of my kids was a very good soccer player, and just the bullying that went on parentally on those
It's awful.
teams about, I feel sorry for anybody who's a coach out there, because you're going to get a blast of "my kid's the best"
Right.
on a very, very regular basis. So I agree with that. I know a lot of people probably know this already. I lived in California when my kids were growing up, and I made my kids go to college out of state because I realized that California is this little bubble all of in itself. And
Mhm.
there's a whole big, I'd traveled enough to know there's a whole big wide world out there, and you better find out how the other part lives. And I think for the most part, my kids get it, that, there's both sides to every situation because of that. But I don't think
Right.
many people realize that. They just, my world is the only world.
Right. And you got to look, I mean, with all the stuff going on, like right now with Black Lives Matter and things like that, everybody has to understand everybody's um, space in this world. It's just not all what you think. You have to be open to what other people are doing, and be kind and be respectful, and be curious. I'm
Mm-hmm.
always curious about what everybody's doing. I might not do it here in my own little world, but I want to know, and I welcome all that. So I think that was kind of the right choice for me and the right road to go when we started our nonprofit. But actually, to kind of relate to what you're doing, what I'm doing, when you talk about people, should you publish your book, and do you have a story? And I spent about a year or two deciding whether a subsidiary of my company was going to be a publishing company, or was I going to go traditional publishing.
Mm-hmm.
And after a lot of research, I decided to do neither and start my own sort of traditional publishing company, which I did. And then I published my first book and then I stopped and published everybody else's. But
Right.
everybody's got a story.
Yeah.
And those stories are wonderful. And there's so many wonderful books out there. However, if you can't market that book, then it's going nowhere. You've wasted your time. And people have to get out there, and when you look at the bestseller list on Amazon, you see where you lie. But if you don't do anything, you might be 6 million, the 6 million
Right.
book that's being purchased. And that's what authors have to know. It's like, you need to go after the professionals to help you get that book out there, or you've got to be peddling that book everywhere you go, because just because you publish it, it is not going to become famous.
Do you know, that is so true? And that's, I know a lot of you guys know I came from traditional publishing. I went into advertising, but when I published my first book, just like you did, I went with a self-publishing company, a big, well-known one out there, and I was pretty stunned at, it's pretty much a factory of, bring me your manuscript, we'll set it up, we'll put it on Amazon. That's it. They'll give you social media tips, they'll give you things here and there, but they don't really give you much time and attention. It's pay me a fee, it'll be out there. And you really have to pay attention to, especially if you have a business, have you built that audience? What tools have you built that audience with?
Right.
And then, do you have a bestseller campaign that's going to give you visibility? And what be on there? Because we actually do those free shipping funnels to lead people back to your business, because most people never sell much beyond that launch. They put
Oh,
that,
I know.
if they do a marketing effort, they launch it and then nothing. So you
Exactly.
really have to
Exactly.
have a plan.
You do, and I always when anybody submits a book to my publishing company, they have to give me their marketing plan. My job is to help you publish it and coach you where to go. I am not a marketing company, so I might say go to you, and you market it for them. That's not my job. My job is to publish it and get it out for you. Now, where are you going to go with it? With my first book, when I did Sticks, Stones, and Stumped, I self-published that. And that was back in the day where, it's nothing like it is now.
Oh, yeah.
And then from doing that self-publishing, that was part of the reason I decided to open a publishing company, because I enjoyed the process. Being a business person, I enjoyed the process more than I did writing. But I'm going to tell you, to this day, that was in 2007. So 13, 14 years ago, that is still my biggest selling book.
Mm-hmm.
And I sell, I have other books, and
It
I
was
hope
my
this
pleasure.
one,
Thanks
new
for
one
having
out,
me, Juliet.
is just as good and just as big. But I market that book, and I've been marketing it for 13 years, and people still buy it. I can even tell you when that book is going to sell the most copies, and it's going to be October. And because when kids get back in school in September and all the bullying starts, everybody buys my book.
Mm-hmm.
And then again in the spring, after school breaks in the spring, again, those are my busiest seasons in school. Can you come in and teach our kids about how to get along? So, but this mask thing is just ruining my business. Put masks on them, and they're not bullying anymore and keeping 6 feet apart. That seems to be working better than all my years of bullying prevention.
That is so funny. But you're right about that. Back when I published in 2009, because I started my company in 2010, it was so different. I mean, I would consider my mystery novels pretty crappy books, and I sold a ton of them. And it wasn't an environment like it is today, where you can manipulate to get on a bestseller list. I mean, there was a mystery. There was one category, and my third book ended up between Sue Grafton and Janet Ivanovich for about a week, which was pretty tremendous for me, because I used to read both of them. So, but not like now, where you can choose categories, and you can, do all those sorts of things. And I do still sell mystery novels, although I'm really shocked that anybody reads them.
You never know. I mean, I did the same thing. I hit number 2 on the bestseller list in children's books for about a week or two, and it stayed there for quite a while. But right in number 2 and number 3, and I never could get to number 1 because I launched my book the wrong time. I launched it mid-May, and but I was along. In front of me at number 1 was Dr. Seuss, All of the Places We Can Go, because it was graduation time. And behind me was the new Pokemon book.
Oh.
So between Pokemon and Dr. Seuss, I felt really good. So
yeah, I definitely would too. And I have to say, this, what you were talking about with traditional publishing, my last book, Pitch Slapped, I considered Randy Pizer, who sells book deals. She's not an agent, but her and her partner can get books in with traditional publishers. She told me, when I told her about the book, I could get you a contract. And I really had to make a decision. Do I want that credibility? But what does that credibility say about me having a self-publishing company when I'm not willing to self-publish my own book? So I went back and forth about that, probably for 2 or 3 months, thinking about, what does that say about me as a person when I won't walk in, what I sell every day? And I finally ended up that I did self-publish my own, but it was a little bit of a dilemma. And you probably have the same thing, because you've been on a bestseller list. You want that credibility and want that. But I think I can. Yeah.
And I went through the same thing over the last year, trying to think about, do I want to go after a traditional publishing, and then I came down to asking myself, if I was running for president, would I vote for myself or would I vote for the other guy? Of course I'm going to vote for myself. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to do my own publishing. Down the road, as sales go down or something else happens that different. But when you do like a Kindle book, or you do an audio book, and my book's available in all 3. Well, audio will be out at the end of this month. And, what do I want to do? Well, I got them in all places. I'm a publisher. I know what to do with them. I know that. So yeah, it depends. But I think in the end, you got to stand behind yourself.
You definitely do. So, question on that. So, audiobooks, super popular, you guys. As a podcaster, did you record your own book or did you
I
have
did
somebody else?
I did not, for a couple reasons. First of
Okay.
all, I am not a great reader, and I don't think you'd want to listen to this voice. So being, I mean, I don't know if you did this or not, but being a publisher, we read a lot. And when I want to be entertained, if I read a book, I can find every mistake. So the
Mm,
periods in the wrong place, and it stops me, and I go back and reread it. So I enjoy audiobooks. That's my
I do
favorite.
too. I do too.
I listen to, when you self-publish or you're a publisher or whatever, you can go, I did mine through Audible, and I went on and I picked the categories that I wanted. I picked the sound of the voice that I wanted, the age of I wanted a woman. I wanted to sound like it was me. And so I picked all those things, and I listened to 248 women
Oh,
speak.
oh my God.
And I narrowed it down to 3 people, and that was it.
Wow.
But this is, of course, I don't know if I would do that. I might give a client 10, 15 people, but I was doing publisher work, author work, and personal work all at the same time. So I got it down to 3 people. I contacted 2 of them. One got right back to me, and I ended up hiring her. So she's actually recording it right now. So no, I wouldn't do it. As a professional, not an author, I would say, unless you've got a beautiful voice and you can read and you're eloquent, then go ahead and do your own book. But I will listen to somebody's voice before I buy a book, because I don't want to listen to you for 7 or 8 hours if I don't like the sound of the voice. So
Right, right.
very, very important.
And
A lot of medical people will do their own book, and a lot of actors do their own book,
mhm.
because actors are good at it. They can do anything. But yeah, that's the main thing for me, listening to an audio book.
Yeah, me too. I listen to several every month, but for podcasters, a lot of times we recommend they read their own books because people are used to their voice as well. But I know what you're saying about that you won't listen to them. I many, many years ago bought a Jackie Collins book, and there were several actors acting out the audiobook.
Mm.
And it sounded like Jackie Collins read one character and she had a lisp, and I couldn't finish the book. It was driving me crazy. And I couldn't believe that someone didn't tell her that was going on, and that it was very difficult to listen to. So,
Oh,
so
it depends if that's something that's going to sell. If they know that you can throw this on the market and it's going to sell, they don't really care that you don't have to get into the details.
right. That's very
Yeah.
true. So where can we find you and find out more about your nonprofit?
Well, you can find me at deblandry.com. That's real easy. And on my website is also my podcast, which is raisingcanepodcast.com. And our nonprofit is CYC SACO, SACO, .com. And everything's there on deblandry.com. And the book is called Independence. It's available anywhere books are sold. And in a couple of weeks, it will be out on audio, and I cannot wait.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thanks for being on today.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me.